Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Janaballabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Janaballabha Girivardhari Jasuranandana Braja Janaranjana Jasuranandana Braja Janaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Om Vishnu Pada Paramahansa Prabhupada Charja Stota Sada Shri Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Ki Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Shri Vrindavan Dhama Ki Jai. Shri Navadip Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Mathura Dham Ki Jai. Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Shama Veda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Narayam Namnam Maskrityam Naram Chaivam Narotaram Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudirayat Nasra Prayeshu Abadireshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shlokir Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. We're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, third canto, chapter 25, text number 3. Yad, Yad, Vidadati, Bhagavan, Sacha, Nandatmana, Mayaya, Tani, Me, Shradanasya, Kirtanya, Jnanukirtyaya, Yad Yad Vidati Bhagavan, Sachanandatmanatmaya, Tani Me Shradanasya, Kirtanyanya Nukirtanya, Yad Yad Vidate Bhagavan, Swachandatmatmanamaya, Tani Me Shradanasya, Kirtanya Yanu Kirtaya. Yajati Bhagavan, Sachadatmatmamayaya, Tani Me Shradanasya, Kirtanyan Yanu Kirtaya. Kirtanyan Yanu Kirtana. Ladies? Charadat Mamimayaya, Tani Me Shradanasya, Kirtanya Jnanu Kirtanaya. Yat Yat, whatever. Vidadate, he performs. Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. Swachanda Atma, full of self-desire. Atma Mayaya, by his internal potency. Tani, all of them. Me, to me. Shradhanasya, faithful. Kirtanyani, worthy of praise. Anakirtaya, please describe. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Therefore, please precisely describe all the activities and pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is full of self-desire and who assumes all these activities by his internal potency. Therefore, repeat, therefore, please precisely describe all the activities and pastimes of the personality of Godhead, who is full of self-desire and who assumes all the activities by his internal potency. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The word anukirtaya is very significant. Anukirtaya means to follow the description, not to create a concocted mental description, but to follow. Shonaka Rishi requested Sutta Goswami to describe what he had actually heard from his spiritual master, Shukadeva Goswami, about the transcendental pastimes the Lord manifested by his internal energy. Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has no material body, but he can assume any kind of body by his supreme will. That is made possible by his internal energy. The verse again. Therefore, please describe all the activities and pastimes of the personality of Godhead, who is full of self-desire and who assumes all these activities by his internal potency. So to describe precisely all the activities and pastimes of the personality of Godhead is a pretty big order. So some people had such advanced intelligence and memory that they could describe all the activities. Nowadays it is something like called magic, and in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is described as Yogeshvara. That is, he is the master of all mystic power. The mystic powers are enumerated in the Nectar of Devotion, but Yogeshvara. But Krishna is the expert. He can disappear. He can transcend he can go beyond the laws of nature. He can perform magical feats that are considered impossible. There are some people that still retain some yogic power, but very few. Prabhupada once told he was in a circus where a man clambered into a box, a trunk, and it was locked. And then the circus people put a blanket or some kind of a screen, a cloth screen. They held it up over the box, and then when they removed it, the man had come out of the locked box. So he had mastered this yogic power of animasiddhi, that he could make himself so small that he could enter out through the cracks in the box. So sometimes it's possible, but it's not such a great thing. It's relegated mostly to circuses, and people are very impressed by the concept that someone can lie on a bed of nails or things like that. A lot of it is superstition and just tricks, magical tricks. But Krishna can perform all of these things. He can make himself an insect. He can make himself an animal. He can disappear. He can enter through the eye. He can enter into water and not be affected. So these are the powers of Krishna, and there's many of them, and they can all be described at great length by people who have a supreme intelligence and good memory. I want to quote from something. Prabhupada gave a lecture. This was in 1973 at Bhaktivedanta Manor. He was lecturing on the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And it's probably one of the most difficult chapters to even consider lecturing on, because it's just a big list of Sanskrit words. And I even knew a person that would read books from beginning to end and never got past the first chapter and just carried the book around for a long time. But anyway, Prabhupada was lecturing on this, and I was in the audience. I was pretending to be awake, but I was actually asleep because I'd been up all night the night before. And this is what he was saying. Then Duryodhana, first of all, pointed out the military strength of the opposite side. And then Prabhupada said, and of course that was what Prabhupada said too, this is intelligence. One should take calculation of the opposing elements or the enemy's side. In fighting, the first thing is to take estimation of the enemy's side, how much they are strong, how they have arranged. Then one should calculate how to counteract, how to fight with them. This is intelligence. Without taking any calculation of the other side, you are not prepared. Then how can you become victorious? This is sane proposal. That is, upayan chintayato pragyo apayan cha nichintayat. And there's no reference. A prajya, an intelligent man, not only thinks of the bright side on this business, or this fight, or this any. So many things we have to deal with. Simply, we should not calculate the brighter side. There is a darker side also. We should always think, quote, if there is some thief, if there is some rogue, they cheat us. He's quoting something. Then what precaution am I going to take? Close quote. This is, meantime, somebody comes and cheats me and go away. Then, therefore, upayan chintayat pragya, apayan chachintayat. Darker side also should be thought of. This is intelligence. Just like they are doing. After calculating the darker side, Enemy means darker side. They can defeat me at any moment. That is darker side. So it's interesting to note that Prabhupada, on 3 separate occasions, said, this is intelligence. That was part of his lecture. This is intelligence. And then on one occasion he said, that is intelligence. So he was talking about Duryodhana. And Duryodhana, although he was very demonic, also had a reputation of being a very good administrator. He was very expert at doing what he did. And he was protective of his citizens. And what I deduced from this talk later on was there was a person who was also sitting in the audience. She was a very intelligent lady and very much admired by her assistants and subjects. But she had some bad habits, like eating meat. So in a sense, she had demonic qualities. So like Duryodhana, she was intelligent, but she was also a demon. And it's interesting that Duryodhana, although he was a very intelligent person, he estimated the strength of the other side, how many people who were joining the Pandavas, he ultimately lost the war. So intelligence is important, and it's a very common thing in the corporate world. People get together and they determine what the enemy is doing, and they try to stay one step ahead of them. Of course, they don't last very long. A few have lasted a long time because they're very cognizant of their competitors' strategies. And a few companies have lasted a long time, but most of them don't last very long, even though they calculate the side. But those who calculate what they're up against usually last a bit longer. Now I'm going to read something with your indulgence that in 1977, about 6 months before Prabhupada departed, he was very ill. He was listening to reports from different devotees from different parts of the world, what they were doing, and he was almost too weak to talk, but he wasn't too weak to listen and to hear and to absorb intimately what they were saying. So one report came from a devotee that we don't hear about very much. His name is Sakshi Gopal, and this was in May of 1977. Let me see if I can find a spot where he's reading. The devotees in London were routinely arrested and taken, and sometimes even taken to court. But usually the police just they ran away before they could be captured. Anyway, this is one of the reports that Prabhupada listened to. It was read to him by someone who was with him, Tamal Krishna, namely the late Tamal Krishna. So this is what he said. Our men were doing Naga Sankirtan. So some constable, police officer, said, "You are blocking the footpath. You are blocking the footpath with your Sankirtan, so I must arrest you." So they were taken to court. The next morning in court, we pleaded not guilty to the charges laid against us. The judge, therefore, deferred our case to a later time, the 2nd of February at 2 p.m. It was not until the day before the hearing that we realized the actual significance of the appointment. The 2nd day of February was the appearance day of Lord Nityananda Prabhu. After ending a morning of fasting and chanting with a blissful arti and splendid prasadam, we sent off for the great Marlborough Street Magistrates Court. There were, I think, about 6 devotees that were arrested and arraigned into court. And in a confident mood, we were sure that Lord Nityananda would protect us. I'm not going to read all of it, but these are the salient points. So this is part of his testimony, and the judge asked him if they could cross-examine the witness because they didn't have their own attorney. So this is what Sakshi Gopal said. There is a fault in the social body at large. Although mankind, and he was quoting something that Prabhupada wrote in an introduction to one of his books, but he had it all memorized. People are not happy with their day-to-day activities, and there is increasing disturbance of drug addiction, prostitution, violence, and crime. The root of the problem is lack of God consciousness. People are aware, and this was said in the open court. People are unaware and that's in Marlborough Court was in pretty much the center of London, central business district. People are unaware of the actual purpose of life. The judge, intrigued by this sound philosophy coming from the witness box, relaxed his judicial appearance, sat back, took a sip of water from his glass. Encouraged, I asked, "Your Honor, with permission, I would like to read a short passage which appeared in the London Observer in October 1972. It is an excerpt from an article written by the eminent English historian, Sir Arnold Toynbee." And then he quoted this, and this I think he read. "The cause of it, the world's malady, is spiritual. We are suffering from having sold our souls to the pursuit of an objective which is both spiritually wrong and practically unattainable. We have to reconsider our objective and change it. And until we do this, we shall not have peace, either amongst ourselves or within each of us. As devotees of the Lord, we strictly follow 4 principles: cultivating the qualities of human life, mercifulness, truthfulness, cleanliness, and austerity. The absence of these qualities means the degradation of society. So, the spreading of spiritual understanding amongst humanity at large is the highest welfare work, and an essential part of this program is the distribution of literature and the congregational chanting in the street of the holy names of God. Is that all? Inquired the judge. Yes, sir, was the reply. Then you may step down, he instructed, adjusting his spectacles and regarding the devotees who were once more assembled in the dock. He said, in a very firm yet amicable manner, in legal terms, you are guilty of obstruction, although it is of a very minor degree. Taking this into consideration, and because of your obvious sincerity, I have decided to dismiss the case. We smiled jubilantly, and, thanking the magistrate, were about to step down when Krishna prompted me to say, "Sir, we were wondering if you had a court library here, in which case we would like to present a book for addition to the collection." "Thank you," replied the judge. "I am quite sure we can accommodate it." Giving a copy of Srila Prabhupada's Sri Ishopanishad to one of the clerks, who promised to pass it on to the judge, we left the courtroom, thanking Lord Nityananda for his mercy. So this indicates that even though we were technically and obviously breaking the law, somehow we were exonerated and excused, even though it was against the law. So this has been the early history of chanting. There's been harassment from governments in different parts of the world, and this is one of the most significant places where Krishna consciousness was. The devotees were doing Harinam Sankirtan down Oxford Street, which is one of the main thoroughfares in London, every single day. And every day the police would come and try to arrest us, but the devotees usually ran away before they could catch us. On that street, there's people that are called street traders that are selling trinkets, earrings and necklaces and rings and things like that. And they're arrested every single day, and they're fined. But they gladly pay the fines because they make more selling their trinkets than the fines add up to. So we were very nicely excused. So, and then when we cross-examined the policeman, who was kind of in plain clothes when he arrested us, he made a mistake. He said there were 5 people, and there were really 7 people there. So this was pointed out by Sakshi Gopal, and the magistrate just said, "Well, that was a mathematical error." And the constable was a little embarrassed, and he kind of shuffled in the dock, and sort of, and as Sakshi Gopal said, a titter went through the courtroom at that mistake. But that was an instance of how the legal things were superseded. And there was another incident where the Pandavasenas were protesting. This was in about 1979, after the devotees were trying to get Bhaktivedanta Manor legalized, because the local council was protesting, saying that that the manor didn't have jurisdiction to have a public worship. So they had a big banner that said, "We want major change." At that time, the Prime Minister of England was called John Major. So the people at Scotland Yard became a little bit alarmed. They knew that the Pandavasenas, that it was kind of a military, or that Sena was kind of a military dimensional word, it means general. And so they didn't know what to do. They were going to arrest them. So they decided to phone the person that they knew, their contact at Bhaktivedanta Manor, named Bhagavat Dharma. And they said, who are these Pandavasena people? Are they terrorists? Should we arrest them? What should we do? And then Bhagavat Dharma proceeded to explain to the people at Scotland Yard that these are not terrorists, they're not dangerous, they're peaceful people, and they should be left alone. So that was the end of that. And they were never pursued, and they still exist today. Just like the magistrate's rule is still in the annals of of jurisprudence in England. So the devotees were never arrested, and they continue to exist, the Pandavasenas. It was a very long and difficult task to get the public to come to Bhaktivedanta Manor. They were coming, but that was highly illegal. It was against the planning permission. The local government, at that time it was called Watford District Council, and later on it was called the Hartford Council. I think it was in the same building. They objected, and they were about to close the manor down, and they proposed that with another site that was a former bus depot, and it was rejected by the devotees. So there were a number of court cases, including the Don Hague Court of Human Rights, and they refused to hear it. So in a sense, the whole thing was illegal. And then, because the local government has jurisdiction over the federal government on issues of planning, the federal government was watching this whole case very carefully, because they were going to have an election and decide finally whether or not the worship at the Bhaktivedanta Manor was legal or not. So the planning committee was an odd number. It was usually 7 or 9, and whatever the majority decided, that became the law. So they were about to have an election, and the federal government was watching this very carefully. They knew exactly what was going on, and they had written 2 news releases, each one 7 pages long. The first one would be if somehow they voted to favor Bhaktivedanta Manor having public worship, and the other one was a negative proposal, saying that we were interrupting, breaking the law and causing confusion. So they had 2 news releases, and they were going to release according to how the vote went. And by Krishna's grace, we had one person, a guy named Frank Ward, who was a Scotsman, who was on the planning commission. And somehow or other, it was completely a miracle, because we'd lost every court case. We won that one, and they voted 5-4 or 4-3 that it was completely illegal. And the federal government then released their positive news release, that they're not causing any problem. We should be very liberal without them. The neighbors should be favorable to them. And we had a big victory celebration on account of the fact that Krishna somehow intervened. We were breaking the law, but Krishna intervened. So this is how Krishna performs these magical events to happen. And they didn't arrest the people who were protesting, and even though he had lost every court case and it was considered illegal, they were released and considered to be completely legal. Yeah. So that did happen. And the idea is that if we pursue our Krishna consciousness, even though we're performing illegal acts, that we will be successful. So are there any comments or questions about all of this? Prabhupada was very pleased to hear that the devotees weren't having to pay legal expenses, and that they were able to prevail in these cases. And there were a number of reports that Prabhupada was to hear in his time of illness, but he chose to hear that one. And that was the one that I read to you. And somehow or other it was considered legal. And the arrest was kind of unusual because that street at that time, it was blocked off to motor vehicles, and only buses and taxi cabs were allowed on the street. So saying that we were obstructing the traffic was a bit of a stretch, because even if there was hardly any traffic on the street, but the idea was that if we were doing Harinam on the sidewalks of the street and forcing people out into the roads, that it would be very dangerous. So that the police absolved us, and that is recorded and still existing. That decision is still existing in the annals of jurisprudence, of British jurisprudence. Oh, and there was another instance that we were breaking the law in which the devotees were exonerated. On Vyasa Puja Day, a devotee told a story that she had heard. She wasn't part of it. I think it was Gokula Rani that told this story, and it's kind of stuck in my mind, that people were with Prabhupada on a walk in a place called Regent Park. Regent is a kind of a word that means the king's park. And Prabhupada wanted one of his devotees to take a twig off of a tree so that he could brush his teeth. And the local policeman or park ranger objected to this because it's against the law to remove anything from the Regent's Park, especially from a tree. And then Prabhupada immediately accosted this man, and the man knew that he was from India. He said, Prabhupada said, you British people have plundered the entire world. He was referring to the former British Empire. And now you're objecting to my taking a twig from one of your trees. And according to the lady who spoke, she said that the park ranger was completely flustered and didn't pursue the matter any further. So even though it was highly illegal to take anything from Regent's Park, it was done, and Krishna approved of it. And I still haven't found out exactly when that happened. Oh, and there was one other instance that showed how Krishna prevailed. It wasn't something illegal, but it was an incident as to how the deities of Radha Landanishwar were acquired. They were the first. I don't know if you've seen pictures of them, but they still exist in the London temple. Radha Landanishwar. They were the first over 1 meter in height marble white temples. And some people in one of the Hindu societies in eastern part of London phoned Prabhupada when he was staying near John Lennon's place, and said that he wanted to donate some very large deities. So apparently he had some very large deities, and I don't know, we found out later that he wasn't actually prepared to give them right then, even though Prabhupada said, well, let's go there straight away in the van. And he took about 5 devotees with him, including myself. Jamuna was there, Tamal Krishna was there, and I think a devotee named Radha Raman was there. So we were all in this room of these people that were the administrators of this Hindu center, and they had a long, kind of very matter-of-fact conversation in Hindi, and none of us could understand what was going on because none of us understood that language. And then he turned to us, and for the first time he said in English to one of the devotees, just see how heavy Krishna is. The deities were right in the room in front of us, and they were just, effulgent. And then this matter-of-fact conversation resumed in Hindi, and it happened so quickly that the people that were supposedly donating the deities didn't even know what was being said. And so one of the devotees dutifully picked up Krishna and said, well, he's not very heavy. And I still think they didn't really understand what was being said. And then, although we didn't understand Hindi, the conversation turned into sort of a jovial one. And these people were smiling that were donating and laughing. And Prabhupada apparently told a joke. And then while they were in a very jovial mood and laughing, he said in English to the devotees, just take Krishna out to the van. And they still didn't really even know what happened. Because they were laughing and jovial when this was happening. But all of a sudden, both Radha and Krishna weren't there in the house. They were out in the van. And so Prabhupada, seeing that all what was going on, said something to these people in Hindi. And before they knew it, the deities were no longer in their house. And Prabhupada very quickly told us to go out there and drove us back. And then on the way back, he kind of said, and this is not a secret, this has been recorded, and this tale is told slightly differently by Tamal Krishna Maharaj, but I read another devotee's perception of what happened, and it was pretty much the way I saw it. And as we drove away, Prabhupada said that, and I foiled the bank manager's scheme. And we couldn't figure out what he was saying, and then he kind of chuckled to himself, and then he said, and then the bank manager said to me, he said, "Mr. Day, you should have been a politician." This was in the time before Krishna consciousness had come west. And later on, we kind of deduced that the Prabhupada was trying to get a loan from the bank, and the bank manager refused. And then later on, he talked him into it in his jovial way. And then the bank manager turned to him and he said, "Mr. Day, you should have been a politician." That was what we kind of figured out what was really happening. And so those deities, the Radha Krishna Landanishwar, are still to this day, as far as I know, at least they were there yesterday, according to the pictures I saw on the internet. And they're still there in the temple, the same deities. And the reason that they told the Prabhupada on the phone that they wanted to donate deities was that this is what I deduced later on. They didn't say this, but there was some damage done to one of the deities. I think it was Radharani's wrist. It was a pretty severe damage, and there's a kind of convention in India that once a deity is damaged, he or she can never be installed in a temple. So at some point they were saying to Prabhupada, now that you've seen the deities, we'll fix them, and then when they're fixed, we'll give them to you. And then Prabhupada said very quickly in English, "We have a man." And then it resumed back into this very serious conversation in Hindi. And when he said, "We have a man," he was kind of gesturing to Jamuna. And she was kind of bewildered because, first of all, she's not a man. And then we had no idea why he said that. But what he did say, we found out later, was that, we'll fix the deity ourselves. So we can take them now and fix them. And you don't, because he kind of deduced that they weren't really going to give them to us. They were just saying that they were, and they wanted to show that they had the deities. Anyway, that was the way the deities came about. So it wasn't exactly illegal, but Prabhupada foiled their scheme of not really wanting to give the deities to us. And before they knew it, the deities were gone, and the whole van, and Prabhupada and the deities and all the devotees were together. And that was the end of that. Hare Krishna. So do you have any comments or questions? Yes?
Guruji, you said one time during all the court cases for years and years with Bhaktivedanta Matter, the devotees used to say a prayer before Mangalarti. Do you remember?
Yeah, they used to say a prayer before Mangalarti. It went on for 10 years. And the prayer was, I don't know exactly word for word what it said, but they recited in unison, "My dear Lord Krishna, if you so desire, please let us be open to the public." And that every morning that prayer was decided, and we prayed to Krishna, and Krishna prevailed. And he was victorious. And as I said, we had lost every court case, and even the federal government sent an inspector who was very typically British, very happy and very polite to us all. But his report afterwards was, "We're going to shut these people down." But anyway, as I said, we lost every court case, and then because one man that we knew was the swing vote from the Tory, the Conservative Party, to the Liberal Party, we prevailed. And even though it was highly illegal at first, the deities were installed, and public worship became a fact. Any other comments or questions?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hypothetically speaking, if the government gets more, say, oppressive, to what degree should one continue Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement?
Say again?
Hypothetically speaking, if the government gets more oppressive, more enforcing, like you've told, to what degree should one continue the Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement?
Well, at the beginning, after losing all the court cases, we thought it was the end, that we would never be able to have public worship at Bhaktivedanta Manor. But it just so happened accidentally. It wasn't in a court of law. The local authority approved of it. So your question was, should we fight the governments if they're inimical towards us? And the answer, I guess, would be no, because we didn't object. We didn't like what they were doing. But once it went to court and we lost, we thought that was the end. And then quite magically, Krishna arranged everything. Yes?
What was your favorite service to do?
Translation?
What was your favorite service to do at that time?
Well, it's like Prabhupada was saying in that letter, that we should always find out the strength of the enemy. And as my mother used to say, you can't fight City Hall. So if the government is more powerful, we can resist it, but we may not like what they say, but we don't have much power, because we're very tiny and very small and very insignificant, and thought to be very manipulatable. So we just kind of didn't fight back, but we won anyway, because Krishna intervened. Does that sort of help?
What was your favorite service?
Favorite?
Service.
Yeah, service.
What?
Service.
Service.
Then?
Yeah.
Well, chanting Hare Krishna. We had a lot of people attending Bhaktivedanta Manor on the weekends, and the thing that made it very difficult was, on one weekend, Janmashtami fell on a weekend. It was a Saturday night or a Sunday night, and everybody wanted to come at midnight and have darshan with the deities. So there was a big traffic jam. I mean, according to the statistics, there's more Indian people per capita in England than any other country, except for maybe Pakistan and India. So anyway, there was a huge traffic jam, and the people that lived in Lechmore Heath, the place where this manor is situated, they couldn't get home because of the traffic jam. And that really tipped a lot of the people who were kind of neutral to the whole thing against us. So it was a pretty difficult situation. It wasn't just the police and the government, it was the local residents. And they had a lot of power.
Yeah, yeah. How long would you do Harinam for? Just
How long would you do Harinam for?
Every day.
how long? How long? Like
6 to 7 hours.
what time? What time would you start?
What happened, what?
What time would you start?
Started about 10 o'clock in the morning. We finished about 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Oh, okay.
That's all we did. Harinam every day.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you. When you did Harinam, were you also distributing books whilst on Harinam?
Yeah, we were, the Harinam party and the book distributors went out together, and by virtue of the happiness and the joviality of Harinam, a lot of books got distributed, because they thought we were very happy people. And the people in that, most of the people in that part of the world are a little stern. The weather is kind of like, cloudy most of the time, and it's very rainy. And when they saw happy people, they felt inclined to, they maybe weren't going to read them, but get a book and give a donation. And as a result, we have a very positive image in that country.
Yeah, thank you. You see this in most countries that are like that, with like Russia, for instance, has a lot of devotees because of the contrast of happy people and the weather.
Yeah, I don't know what it's like in Russia, but I think they're a little stern too, because I think in Moscow, at least, the weather is pretty cloudy and miserable. from my experience. That it's cold and miserable in there.
It's,
But somehow or other, the devotees were, happy, and they prevailed. And when the Bolshevik government was overturned, when there was no longer a communist government, it was even better.
This is the kind of hurdle we face when we go out on book distribution is on Harinam. People seem to be in an enjoying mood anyway. They're already kind of happy to some level. Obviously, they don't realize what's going on.
Yeah, one of the ways that's always successful, in my estimation, of distributing books is that the person who tries to distribute the book is a very happy person, and they usually don't encounter people that are that happy. So even though they take the books with the thought that they're never going to get around to reading it, a lot of them do, and some of them even become devotees.
Thank you, Maharaj.
So carry on. When I was with Shama Sundar and Gurudas and our wives and a little child. We were in Montreal, heading to London, and that's when Prabhupada told us this story about a silent film he saw of Charlie Chaplin or Max Linder, who was dancing, and some mischievous boys. It was out in a park scene. And there was a platform, a marble platform like the marble floor here. And they were all drinking. So this guy got up and didn't realize that his coattails were torn. And then he started dancing on the dance floor. And the other people thought that, well, this is a pretty interesting way to fashion. So they went into the men's room and where there were mirrors and started ripping their coattails the same way. And pretty soon the whole about 10 couples were ballroom dancing, and with their coattails cut. And the Prabhupada just told us the story. And then on the way back, we said, well, what was the significance of that story? And we kind of deduced that Prabhupada knew we were going to London the next day, and that his telling that story was that if you do something in London that's unconventional, we were asking him, do you have any advice for us before we go to London? If you do something that's unconventional, but you exude a certain happiness, that it will be effective and people will like it and they'll gradually accept you. And that came to be true. And that's the reason why that story was even told, I think. Don't ask me where that film is, because I've looked high and low for it for 20 years and still haven't found it. But several other devotees saw the film exactly the way Prabhupada described it, so it does exist somewhere. Okay. So the search continues. Any other questions or comments? Okay, we'll stop there. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Mukunda Maharaj ki.